Another thing we learned from dogs is healthy ways to perceive our reality. In a workspace, there tends to be these dualities. We have different relationships with different people, and some can be antagonistic, some can be obnoxious, some can be humorous. There's all these kind of different things. But it tends to be more about dealing with the individuals. When a dog comes into a room, a dog is in the room and takes the whole room in with all their senses. So if we're up here thinking about what Joe is going to say because he didn't like our report, then what happens to our body? Our bodies are just tense, bracing for it. There's this word dread, the dread of what could happen. Dogs don't have dread. So if we think about perception in dogs have the big picture. They know what's going on 360. So it literally relaxes the body when you go out of duality lens and open up into a wide space.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the mothership website of the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. It's called The Goodness Exchange. And here at The Goodness Exchange and the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, we are celebrating what's right with the world. And we're going to get right to that today with another guest, Tom Schlesinger. Tom Schlesinger is one of those people. He's a thinker who has quietly shaped the stories that are shaping us. So Tom, for decades, has worked with places like Pixar, Disney, LucasFilms, Red Bull Media, even the Society for Neuroscience. And what Tom does is he helps them navigate the complexities and the emotions and purpose of the stories they are trying to tell in the films and content they're creating. He's taught over 10,000 filmmakers, leaders, and scientists how to use the power of story as not for entertainment, but as a tool for compassion and building cultural change. And his projects have won Academy Awards, premiered at Sundance, and sparked educational movements around the social impact that are changing the future for gosh knows how many people. His signature system is called the Schlesinger method, and it combines somatic intelligence, which we're going to get to. I didn't know what that was. Mythic imagination, another thing I didn't know much about, but now I'm so much more aware of. And improv theater, which most of us know helps people loosen up and have access to more openness and wisdom than our rational mind would normally go to. This is the kind of knowledge we need to react as our best selves to the world all around us that we can't control. And here's where things get really interesting. Somatic intelligence, that term that I didn't know much about, means that our bodies are actually carrying memories, meaning, and that source of intuition that we always act with, or that we often act with, well, that's where it lives, in our somatic intelligence. I can't wait for you to learn more about that. In today's episode, we're going to really double down on it because we're going to interview Tom twice. And this starting interview today, we're going to get at this idea of narratives and story and what's going on between our ears, the mental chatter that's in there, through the lens of dogs, man's best friend. They're like the masters of somatic intelligence. And sometimes we can see how our own thoughts can be improved by just being in the presence of a canine buddy. I know this will hit home for lots of you. We have a beloved dog. Tom does. Oh, so many people will understand and appreciate what Tom is saying once we put some of his greatest insights through the lens of our relationships with dogs and this mythic imagination part of the equation. Well, that's kind of the arc, the big picture of things. And of course, dogs help us appreciate the big picture almost every minute they're at our side. So we're going to get into this wonderful conversation with Tom Schlesinger and take you to a place there where I think you'll never look at the complexities in life or a canine buddy with the same eyes ever again. So welcome, Tom Schlesinger. Okay, Tom and I were chatting just for a second, and given that introduction, that seems a bit of a roller coaster ride. Tom, Open us up with a thought.
What comes to me is that many of us have this issue with mental chatter, chattering monkeys. Many, many, many people. And what has come intuitively to me about this is to first remember that we are all mammals. That's number one. And so, in order to learn how to kind of go into our bodies and connect with our body wisdom, to be more creative, to have more fun, to be more improvisational, the best way to do it is just to observe dogs. They don't have to think about it, they just do it. They're just living bodies of memory, intuition, and information with joy and humor. And that's the missing element. Not many people talk about joy and humor, but sorry if I rattled on, but we're mammals. We can learn how to go into our deep, ancient body wisdom by watching our dogs.
Tom, okay, so just to make sure you know where all that came from, because that's the level of fresh ways of thinking that we're going to introduce you to today. And that's what we all need in this world out there that's so chaotic and it feels so fearful often and so forth. We need a way to quiet our minds. I call it mental chatter. Tom calls it, uses a Buddhist term for it. What's the Buddhist term for it?
Monkey chatter.
Monkey chatter. I mean, this stuff that's
Yeah.
constantly going on between our ears, it's like a constant narrative. It is the stories we are telling ourselves. This is what Tom has taught me in our pre-calls, is that in our minds there is a rambling, a rumination that's happening of a constant narrative that's a story. It's the stories we learned around the dinner table when we were 5 about not being good enough, or 12, or whatever. Tom tells some a few great stories from his childhood that he still has to override from time to time. Okay, so start us off on this thought process that we might go through. For instance, you know, everything we need to know about our inner story, maybe dogs already know. Like, start us there.
Well, before there was spoken language, mammals were telling stories. There's cave paintings from tens of thousands of years ago. How did they communicate with each other? Well, they weren't talking, so they communicated with their bodies and making grunts and groans every once in a while and pointing and doing things. And to this day, these are the best storytellers, the ones that are acting it out in their body like it's happening right now. So, one thing to know about inner voices is that they're always self critical, either about me or about projecting on someone else, but they're always lies.
Mm,
And so we need a lie detector, and that lie detector is the wisdom of our body.
mm. So when we are telling a story or we're listening to this mental chatter more than we probably should, I think what you're suggesting is that we can see whether our bodies are becoming more closed, or maybe we're fidgeting with our hands, or maybe like if we start to notice these bodily signs
Hmm.
that this mental chatter is unhealthy, untrue, just overwhelmingly critical. Maybe we can pause for 2 seconds and shift up to a new place. Am I, once in a while, I'm going to throw this at you in like everyday people language. Is that about the long and short of it?
Is that the long and short of it?
Okay, is
Um,
that the short of it?
sorry, you
Because
said
we're going to
short.
go in, we're going to go into the long of it here. We're
It's
just getting started.
it's all about pausing.
Okay.
It's all about pausing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a rough, very rough plan, Tom and I, for putting this thing called the Schlesinger method. I mean, Tom, it gets, as I mentioned in the opening, is working with people like LucasFilms and Pixar and Disney. So, like, this is not a small knowledge bank. This is a huge, impactful um, way of perceiving the world that we're sharing with you. Let's talk about the somatic intelligence taught by dogs. Like, what's going on with their bodies and our bodies and truth?
And of course, that somatic just means body, and but we think about it just in terms of our body wisdom. As I was saying, that tens of thousands of years ago, animals and mammals were telling stories, and they weren't talking. And I think that because of all the mind chatter and that, if we learn how to just calm that down and just kind of be more from, our bellies, rather than our heads, then yeah, we can just watch dogs or remember stories about dogs we've had, and I should just say this. I know it might sound a little radical within the context, but there's a lot of cat people that experience this as well. I mean, we have dogs, so we'll talk about dogs, but cat people also.
We have a cat too, and we have always had cats. Yeah, no, we could have this whole conversation through that lens. It would be a little different, but yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We have a crazy, lovely cat right now. That's the most effervescent cat we've ever had. That's for sure.
Yeah.
He's like a small dog. Okay. So here's something that you can rebuttal if you want, or give us your thoughts on. So we're not good at something that I think is important that dogs are good at, and that's if we feel something off. Okay, so if a dog feels something that's off, they don't reason it away, but we often do. We don't trust our felt sense a lot of times. And so, if humans trusted their intuition, this felt sense, more with half the clarity of dogs, how would it change our decision making? Because that's how all this gets translated, right? Our felt sense becomes our actions, our decisions and actions.
Yeah, and I would even say that when we're feeling things in our hearts, when we're literally coming down, we have a physical heart, an emotional heart, and let's say a spiritual heart. But because we're feeling, when we're in our bodies, we're feeling things in our hearts, then that lends towards compassion, empathy, balance, wisdom, wonder, sharing, and so on. And it's a natural state for mammals.
And it is what we love about our dogs. They're so darn all of those things you just mentioned.
And they're comedians, many of them. I mean, an example is we had one dog that loved to eat couches when we were away. And every time we came back, he'd have the same look on his face.
Like waiting for weather, because he knew.
Yeah, they know for sure. I can show you videos of it. There's a video of my niece just has like a, I don't know, 12-week-old Labrador. And she was home alone. She went to the bathroom. She kept the door open. The Labrador came in, grabbed the toilet paper, and started running around the house with it. And she realized she knew she had to laugh, that she had work, she had the kids, she had all that stuff going on. So they can be like clowns as well.
That reminds me of a little quote I'd like you to comment on. I'm not sure who said this, but dogs do speak, but only to those who know how to listen.
I joke about this, but I'm quite sure that if there are past lifetimes, I've had a number of them as Labradors. And there's just something that I just melt when I see them. And so we've had 3 generations of our family now have all had Labradors, some black Labradors, some gold Labradors. And we have a treasure chest of stories about them.
And do those stories... Okay, so back to story.
Yeah.
I'll bet you those stories are almost iconic reminders of good character. Whether it's a sense of humor, whether it's courage, whether it's wisdom. So that's what dog stories, when people tell me dog stories, I often feel like they're telling me stories of the things they value, the thing, like good character.
Yeah. So, for example, when I was in film school, I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and we were having a really rough time because I was starting school, she was starting work. We just moved out from Illinois. It was really, and my dog Carson was there, kind of taking it all in. And at a certain point, we started yelling at each other, and it was something to do with the tablecloth that we had bought, But we're yelling at each other, and we're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So what happens? We're more constricted. Our faces are red. We're really in this kind of state. My dog Carson goes into the dirty laundry, and he comes out between us with a pair of panties in his mouth,
Okay.
and he's waving it between us like this, like a white flag.
Oh,
I mean,
see?
yeah, I
See?
mean, yeah,
I want people to just pause for a second
yeah,
and think about the dog stories they would share, just like Tom did.
yeah,
You got those dog stories. We
yeah. I'd
had a
love to hear
dog.
him too. I'd love to hear him
Yeah.
too.
No, we had a dog before the one we have now who died in my second daughter's lap. And it felt like the whole thing was supposed to unravel exactly. She was old. She'd been very, very ill. We took our son to a basketball game. He was in AAU basketball, and we knew Franny was on her last few days, and Louisa called us, and she is the sweetest. She is the softest, hardest human. Sometimes I think she's even not a real human. She's so soft. She's so lovely.
Yeah,
And she calls us and said, Mom, I think Franny is going to die right in my lap. And I said, she's choosing that.
yeah,
She's not over under a bush.
yeah,
She's choosing that.
yeah.
So be present with it. It's lovely. Oh, it's going to make me cry. So, that story is about Luisa's good character. Dogs always bring us back to these stories about how we can be our best selves, or how they mirror what we could value as somebody's best self. I really want people to pause maybe at this point in the recording and think about their best dogs, their best dog stories. And, you know, that's the kind of thing, I'm going to bring it back to our topic here. That's the kind of thing I can imagine in Human 2.0 we could have playing between our ears in our mental chatter. Is stuff related to our best selves.
The beauty of remembering these stories is that what happens when you remember a story about your dog, a story that you remember, and maybe you just give us a brief story, something endearing, something special that your dog did.
Okay. Let's see. So I just told you that one. How about we have a dog now, Finn, who looks astonishing like the first dog, only rescue dog. So that's a pure coincidence. Same size, same everything, kind of shepherd mix. And one time we decided, we went away for the weekend and we were going to have a house sitter come, and it didn't work out. So that house sitter didn't come. There was a miscommunication. The house sitter didn't come on a Friday, didn't come on a Saturday, and we come home on a Sunday. And Finn sat there on this weird chase lounge on our front porch, must have, for the whole 3 days. Never moved. We've often wondered how long she would have sat there waiting for us to come back.
Mm-hmm.
No food, no water for 3 days. When was she ever going to move it? To me, that's like some kind of endearing loyalty or hope. Is that hope? Is that also some courage? I don't know. But I'm back to the fact that dogs teach us how to be our best selves.
And it's courageous patience. It's courageous patience.
Okay.
And so, Linda, when you tell that story, where are you feeling it?
Okay, I sat up a little bit taller, and I
Yeah,
put my shoulders back.
right, right. So that's coming into our bodies. It's just, it's like, it's not that we're going to get off track. It's just to remember to come back home. And, as I mentioned, like when we're in our head, somebody refers to that as being homeless, meaning we're not in our home. But even telling these stories, we're not chattering up here. We're in our bodies, and even though it's something that happened in the past, the stories last forever. And so that impact and what you learn from that is in your body.
Mm. It's lovely, and it's a lovely reminder. Okay, here's topic number 2. So you talk a lot about something called mythic imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our inner archetypes. And even the word archetype is getting to be insider language.
Yeah, yeah.
Fill in some gaps for us on this.
Well, the archetypes are simply patterns of behavior, and sometimes there's a god personifying that pattern or a goddess personifying that pattern of behavior. But I think when I think about kind of the mythic dimension, there are great Greek and Roman myths and so on. For me, it really has to do with the depth of understanding we have about not just our lives, but the lives that have preceded us. And so I may be getting a little too esoteric here, but I think that I have a better way to say this. So I studied with a mythologist named Joseph Campbell for many years, and then I studied many, many years with his protege, Jean Houston, who's just a Renaissance woman and an amazing woman. And they talked about what was called, Joe talked about the hero's journey, and Jean was moving towards the heroine's journey. Then my friend Maureen Murdoch wrote a book about it. So the thing that is natural about these paradigms is that they're patterns of behavior, and they're just about the adventures we go on in our lives and the challenges we have and so on. So I'm very fascinated by the heroine's journey, and the heroine's journey, very briefly, just really has to do with if you're working in this, I would say masculine driven, more patriarchal world, there's a detachment from the feminine. So, and it can be a detachment from the mother. So what the hero's journey is about is no matter how successful we become, we may have a deep, empty feel inside of us. And of course, it's especially with women because of the gender politics and so on. And eventually, we can't continue in that kind of outward, materialistic, step by step, rising the ladder way because we get more and more disconcerted about it. So, this is when the heroine's journey starts. And a simple way to view the heroine's journey is that it's not an outer journey, it's an inner journey to reconnect with our nature, reconnect with being mammals, reconnect with human nature. So and then also, which also relates to our dogs, is that in the process of being able to learn more about who we really are, minus the chattering voices, we form a community of like-minded people that will support us in speaking our voice and acting out what we need to act out. So it's not one person against the shadow. It's not a journey outward. It's a journey inward to the center of who we really are, with the support, in most cases, of a community of women. And that changes everything. So I'm just bringing that up because these are the journeys that in my dogs I've had. These are the journeys that the dogs go on without any guidance, without having to go to a seminar. So I'll give you a quick story about that. My dog Carson, who I had, this Labrador, when I was in film school, I was living with a friend of mine, and every day Carson would disappear for the whole day, every single day. And then oftentimes he would come home caked in mud. He hated being clean. So this took some detective work. But what we found out was he'd wake up, we'd play with him, he would have his meal, and then he would disappear. he was going to be with the local children in the neighborhood, picking them up one at a time. So that's the community that's building. And he'd go with them to school, and then they would play with him before they went into school. And then when they were in the classrooms, he was usually sitting outside in the sprinkler until they came out for recess. We'd play with them again, and then at the end of the day, he'd go and he'd probably have a couple meals, and hang out with families and do stuff. And then he came back to his everyday world, where I was living with my friend. So the journeys, he's been on journeys. I have to tell you a quick one. The first day I went to UCLA film school, it was about a 4-mile bicycle ride. I took Carson, and he was all over the place, and he wanted to, he wouldn't, I couldn't tie him up when I was in class and so on. So the next day it's like, that's it. I can't bring him. So I go to class. I'm going through. It's very, it's really exciting. It's film, everything, great people, great students around me. And there's a big auditorium class with like 300 people in it. I'm just really totally into it. And then I instinctively felt Carson before he came into the auditorium. It just like there, I had a feeling. And then I look, and then he's like prancing down the right aisle, and the professor is going berserk. Get this dog out of here. There's no dogs allowed. And this is Carson, this woman is saying, take this dog out immediately. And I'm kind of going like this in my chair. Then he jumps up on the stage, and he prances behind her, and she's going on and on and on. Whoever has this dog, take him out. And I'm like slinking in. He jumps off, he jumps off the stage. He comes right down the aisle. I'm like 25 aisles back. Comes right in and jumps into my lap. But this is a part, these are journeys, and they're heroine's journeys because he's on his own. He's not doing the usual domestic thing. He finds his community every day, and it's a community of what? Play and love and joy.
It's so true. Okay,
Yeah.
this is mythic imagination, folks.
But
We got to pay attention to
mythic
this.
story.
It's a mythic story.
Yeah.
And I have this idea that every time we let Finn out at night, of course, I live in Vermont, northern Vermont. It's dark here by 4:30 right now. 4:30. Doesn't get light till 7:30. It's like dark a lot right now. And every time I let her out into the darkness, I think of a mythic journey that she goes on. Because she's from a breed, an Alsatian Shepherd guards the perimeter of places. So she has her perimeter thing that she does all around our house, and we live in the deep woods. So there's a bear that took down the bird feeder 4 feet from me last spring. Bobcat just got a rabbit right in front of our eyes the other day. There's creatures here, moose. Okay. And I have always thought of that when she goes out the door and it's pitch black and she goes out there courageous and careening like she knows something's out there and she goes straight for it. And then she's out for an hour barking or doing this or that. Yeah. I think she's been on a little journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to bring that back to our own lives, am I right in thinking that it's okay for us to think like that when we charge off to work this morning? Into a crazy traffic or to a workplace we're not that happy with. What if we thought of that as the heroine's journey? Like we're still trying to put food on our kids' on our family's table.
Right.
And we don't have another job. The jobs aren't that easy to get, whatever. What if we thought of what would our bodies tell us? What could we do differently if we learn from our dogs and their adventure to find us in the classroom or their adventure to go out and sweep the property here? What if we thought of our everyday lives like that when we got in the car and went to work to places that might not be bringing too much light to us? What if we thought of it as the heroine's journey?
It conceivably could have a very positive global impact.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. All my working life here with the Goodness Exchange, which is now 12 years, has taught me that there's something that every single person's uniquely built to contribute. Hands down, I'm absolutely certain of that. And a lot of people never find what that is. And I tell people, but whatever you're doing right now, if you're truly present with it, you can find something that you're uniquely built to contribute, even in a bad work environment. There's something. You can be the one around the meeting table who always brings up something positive to ponder on, as well as the negative or whatever. You can be the person who makes sure that little personal thank you notes get written to each other, whether the boss deserves that kind of a culture or creates that culture or not, whatever it is. So I'm thinking in just this one little, the second thing we talked about, the mythic imagination, and our conversation about how dogs teach us that in their everyday lives. I think that's a big opening for folks to kind of find some courage and some grit, even
And
if their circumstances are not ideal.
that's right. That's right. And you mentioned earlier the idea of if there's a lot of chatter and a lot of stress, how important it is to pause. I'm not going to go for the dog pause. Sorry, it just came up. I couldn't help it. Not dog pause, but the pause is also what mammals and what dogs do. They'll here's the Labrador pause.
Yes. And here's Finn's pause. Finn, the Alsatian. She just looks across the pond into the deep woods with like laser like focus, and we're all with
Yeah,
we got the fancy binoculars, because we're bird nerds that can
yeah.
go in low light. We're trying so hard to see what she's seeing. We never see it, but she knows there's something there, and it's because she's pausing. Yeah, I could go on, but in the part 3, what I was going to ask you about is the heroine's journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of a healing path, don't you think? Like if the hero's journey is all, is all courage and forward at any cost and battling whatever comes next, the heroine's journey seems to me it's more inner, and it softens us. It's a place of more calm. So there's this quote, Tom, that I think fits very well right here where we are. It's dogs are our link to paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us in the current world, the state of things outside our front door and sometimes inside our front door, there's no paradise out there. It feels too negative,
Yeah.
too much noise and too much discord. But our dogs are our link to paradise. Tell me what you think about that in conjunction with this heroine's journey that I think we could all use a bit more of.
Well, the heroine's journey is about the return from the thoughts down into our bodies. But the thing that kind of comes up for me is that everything that dogs do are what we need to feel more peace and calm with everything that's going on, everything that's so fast, so fast, so fast. And so by being with dogs and studying dogs, it literally is a way for us to find what a wise man once said, that the kingdom of heaven is within. And the kingdom of heaven is within our bodies. And so dogs are exhibiting this like all the time. So if we think about it, and this also applies to being a very talented storyteller, they're brilliant at improvisation. They are every guru's dream in terms of being present. Yeah. Um, Empathizing and connecting. They know when we're not feeling well or we're sad or something like that. So they're able to kind of sense everything that's going on with us. And if we just, by observing our dogs, we can use some of their behavior. And in order to kind of, it says, do you ever wake up with problems on your mind and feeling stressed just from the get go?
Yeah.
Think of what dogs do. And another word for it is downward facing dog.
Yes.
What do they do when they get up? With me, I get up, I go right to the problems of the day until I meditate and move and stuff like that. They do this beautiful stretch.
Right. Finn does that every single morning, right in our bedroom on the
I
floor.
know, they just
Yes.
take the time
Yes.
to
Thank you.
kind of come into their bodies.
It's
They're
almost
geniuses at it.
I think it's almost like a connection. They're reestablishing a connection with themselves and how they're feeling, right?
Yeah,
Before they launch out to check our perimeter, or in your case, go find Tom across town in a
yeah.
lecture hall.
Well, yeah, certainly they're relaxing their bodies so they can really be fully open in terms of their
Right.
instincts and intuition and guides.
Yeah.
So they're amazing improvisational actors. They're gurus. They're amazing meditators, and they're right with you. I mean, the slightest move, an easy example of that, and some of you folks who have dogs maybe have this experience about how much they love to go out in the morning. Like Carson, I had a job, I was in graduate school in film, I had a relationship, all this stuff going on every single morning, and I'd be trying to get enough sleep to get through the day. I'd be laying there and I'd start to hear, and he'd be like this far from my face. He wouldn't wake me up. He wouldn't wake. It'd be as soon as one eye opened, it was all over.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Okay. So that right there reminds me of
yeah,
if we want to just kind of give people like a thought experiment or a way to thinking about how we all charge off into the workplace every morning, or so many do. Even people that are virtual feel this, I'm sure. The hero's journey is something we've always sort of been taught we were supposed to do. Have grit, like
mm-hmm.
the every major book seems like telling you the 4-hour work week, whatever it is, how to charge in. It's like a conquest. The hero's journey is a conquest. And that's the way I was taught to compete in a man's world. I mean, I was a
Right.
dentist for 35 years.
Yeah,
Oh, I could tell you stories about the
yeah,
heroine's journey versus the hero's journey. But I had to be in the hero's journey. I had to be it was like a conquest to run a big practice with 17 employees and 3,000 patients and do good business and still love people as much as my husband and I did. Okay. But the heroine's journey, what you've taught me, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have a choice to just live every day like it's a conquest.
So another thing we learned from dogs is healthy ways to perceive our reality.
Oh, let's talk about this because that's everything, right?
Yeah,
What's real?
yeah. So in a workspace, there tends to be these dualities. We have different relationships with different people, and some can be antagonistic, some can be obnoxious, some can be humorous. There's all these kind of different things. But it tends to be more about dealing with the individuals. So when a dog comes into a room, a dog is in the room and takes the whole room in with all their senses. So if we're up here thinking about, what Joe is going to say because he didn't like our report, then what happens to our body? Our bodies are just tense, bracing for it. There's this word dread, the dread of what could happen. dogs don't have dread. They do have a sixth sense about many things. And so it really goes from letting go of seeing a workplace in terms of a duality and seeing, there's Republican, Democrat, left, right, men, women, and all that. So all of that is just a mental construct. So if we think about perception in dogs, dogs have the big picture. They know what's going on 360. Yeah. And I find, I was kind of, educated in a way that it was always this good guys, bad guys, and all that, but that's so limited. So it literally relaxes the body when you go out of duality lens and open up into a wide space. And that allows us then to use our senses, because when we're like this, we're not using our senses. And if a dog gets intense about something, what do? The most beautiful shake from the end of their tail to the tip of their nose, and then it's gone. That releases stress.
I've been seeing some science on that.
Good.
There's all these new Tai Chi, not new, Tai
Yeah.
Chi's as old as it can be,
Yeah.
but reminders of some of the wisdom of exercise like Tai Chi, where you just wiggle a lot. You wiggle this part, that part.
There are moves. There are moves that you just shake it off. You just
Yeah.
shake it off you do this really weird horse thing. It's like
Yeah.
and shaking it all off.
Yeah.
But athletes will do that. Animals do it all the time.
Well,
They
I
do
was
it
a
all the
swimmer.
time.
I was a really, really high level swimmer.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 hours a day in the swimming pool. And
Wow.
that's what you do. Before you get up on the block, and sometimes after, or
Yeah.
or just before you get ready to start, you're doing this incredible, swimmers do this incredible shake thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just watch what the Olympics, you'll see them on the blocks doing this shaking of the hands, shaking of the feet, the leg
Yeah.
here, and that's what they're doing before it's like go time, and then you take your position, and then you try and launch off that block as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be learned. That this is just a little sidebar, but physically, I have been doing that. In fact, I was doing it the other night. My kids thought I was completely losing it. Completely losing it. But
Yeah.
I'm always open to things, and I was trying, and I did feel better afterwards. So I
Yeah.
don't care about being laughed at. But I think it's important for us to look at this duality issue, which we will go into in recording number 2. So if you want to know more about this, the way I'm going to just plant a seed for you is that start looking at how many of your thoughts, how many of the people you are listening to. Oh, don't even get me started on the folks we give our attention to online.
Yeah.
The people who are waving their arms and shouting at us. They're so sure of themselves and their opinion.
Yeah.
They are in conquest mode. They're in conquest mode. That's not what we want. We don't need more of that in our lives.
So, keeping it simple, when we go into a room, if we just experience the whole room, it puts us in a completely different space. And that's exactly what dogs do when they come into a room. They take in the whole room, and they take in the whole room with all of their senses. Now, the best stories are stories that bring in the senses of where they're taking place, what they're smelling, what they're hearing. I'm very sensitive to sounds, for example, but by engaging, I'm just going to get a little storytelling thing here because that's where we're going with the body, with being mammals. And it's that when we tell stories that engage the senses, we engage the audience in a very deep way. It's not just cerebral. And the other thing is when we're telling a story, we're also acting it out. Our bodies are telling the story as well. Real storytellers, when they're telling a story, their bodies are moving around. So a dog can understand the stories because they're reading, they're reading what we're doing. We maybe need more dog editors.
Yes. Yes, but I like that as far as a reminder of how we behave in a family setting where maybe
Yes,
we
that's
we don't
another good
feel
one.
welcome, right? Like we
Yeah,
go to our mother-in-law's house and we've never fit in and blah blah blah.
right.
Or in a family setting right in our own home when the 14-year-old is not doing the things that are making us very happy and he's uncomfortable, we're uncomfortable, blah blah. I mean, there is a moment where we can pull back and not be laser focused on that one thing or what we think that one thing is going to be said or that one
Hmm.
thing that our boss is maybe thinking or the person who I mean, I really like this thought that we go into a room whether we know it's going to be a difficult meeting or a family meal that could go
Yeah.
south or whatever with a more open to the 360 of the room rather than these laser focuses on conquest that we have.
Or the
Like,
person who can hurt you.
yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Again, we're going to go more into this because this duality issue is really huge. And since you've turned me on to it, I don't have as many bad feelings. Like, I, I'm very careful about who I listen to and what I
Hmm.
give my attention to in the news. That's a whole nother topic. But I only give my attention to people that are not loud and they're trying to look at things with a thoughtful, measured
Hmm.
voice.
Yeah.
Just thoughtful and measured. And I tell you, the day you dropped the duality thing on me, that changed everything.
Yeah.
Two, it explained a lot of what I was turning my back on consciously
Hmm.
because I could feel that there was only A or B with this person.
Yeah.
And life is more complex than that. And since then, I tell you, I walk around more with a spring in my step. So hang tight. Tom and I got a lot to talk about in this episode yet,
Yeah.
but we're going to cover this duality issue that I think will be quite freeing. And boy, it allows you to move from conquest to connection just like that. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So, if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay. The next category. This is so important. The silent evolution. Dogs lead it every day. So, dogs don't preach. They don't protest. They evolve with us sort of silently. They sort of soft heart. They're just so grounded in the moment. Eckhart Tolle. I mean,
Hmm.
God, could there be anybody wiser? Um, he says, dogs remind millions of people of the joy of being.
I,
Talk to
I
us about
literally,
this.
my tail started wagging when you said that,
I mean,
because
this is
that's the
this is
joy.
I
That,
know.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
So, Tom,
yeah.
you say we're not in a revolution, but in a subtle evolution. And I told you the other day I'd had some people approach me about being part of a group that was doing this. They were kind of turning
Yes.
their back on the craziness that's in the world and deciding to
Hmm.
stop trying to fix everybody.
Right.
This group, it's about 2,000 world leaders in a gazillion different fields. They're all coming
Hmm.
together and they're saying, that's it. We can't fix everybody else. We got to fix ourselves about how we feel about the rest of the world. And it's that silent evolution that you're talking about. Talk to us about this.
Well, silent in terms of we're not hearing about it on the news. But I'd like to read a sentence from Maureen Murdoch's book, The Heroine's Journey, because it's one that has always just stood out and gives me the chills. And she was at a conference and she said, what she enjoyed about it was there was a redefinition of success. The redefinition of success to include well being, balance, wisdom, wonder, compassion, and sharing. And just kind of hearing that these are, what in Jungian terms, what are called the feminine qualities. And in a patriarchal world, they are not recognized because they can't be sold. They can't be marketed. Yeah. And so I think that you know, what we're talking about here is realizing that not only when we open up to well-being, balance, wisdom, wonder, and honor that, and there's people in communities honoring it and supporting us to be in it, it is a kind of a silent, quiet form of evolving. Or you can just say growing, and growing deeper.
So I think you're right. I think it's an evolution stage. And I don't mind saying that I feel sometimes that we're on the cusp of being able. I know what's happening with the internet doesn't doesn't reveal that, but I love people, and I see in even the harsh characters I've met, a light when you search for it of that where connection raises everybody up to a level up here
Hmm.
where you can get along at a picnic. You and I talk about that in episode number 2 as well,
Hmm.
where people
Yeah.
who are on very different ends of the spectrum can find all the things that they have in common.
You know, in my experience, even getting together in a circle without even having to do anything starts to change things right away, because there is that kind of connection in the circle, because you're not just, because you're looking around, you're part of three-dimensional experience. So I think that there's these very little simple things that we can do, and just as reminders of, we're very much here to experience joy.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it kind of a neuro setting? I'm like, is it like recalibrating our nervous system to think in a more evolved way? Or is back to the dogs, if we pay attention to who they are and how they react, and we find ways to use them as teachers in some way, is it a reset of the nervous system? A recalibration, do you think?
Well, it definitely is. It takes us out of fight or flight, which is really where all the stress kind of comes from. And so when we're in our sympathetic nervous system, it's really about that kind of slowing down. The other thing is, it's not a bad idea to walk around on all fours once in a while. If you have kids, especially. Now, the difference between being with young kids, standing up, and being with young kids, because it's almost like we become their dog. They're climbing on us, they're
They
doing
think it's
stuff.
so funny. Yes, they think it's so funny. My husband's a great one for that. He's
Yeah,
6'6", 270 pounds. He's just a giant of a human being,
yeah,
and he played professional basketball and all that. So he's that kind of a
yeah,
athletic guy. So it's nothing for him. But that's what he intuitively does when he's around small children.
yeah,
Tom, he gets on the ground.
right.
He'll get on the ground. He'll either sit like an Indian right with them, even trying to get lower than their heads, or he'll go on all fours. I think that's a way for us to connect to a different part of us as well.
Yeah, and it's always talked about as being woo-woo, but I mean, it's really it is coming back to nature. It's coming back to our nature, which isn't existing up here with all the chattering.
Yeah.
So, like during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time by myself, and I literally became a tree hugger. That doesn't go over big in a lot of conservative circles, but it became very simple. I was just sitting there, and I realized I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the trees, and the trees might not be there if it wasn't for me. We learned this in second grade, that we breathe the oxygen from the trees, and the trees use photosynthesis and change the carbon dioxide with water, and then it feeds all of the plants. There's a whole genius underworld system where there's sharing that takes place. I've seen videos now where there's like birds talking to the trees. And so I think that, we kind of mentioned on the idea of hierarchy, but just in terms of, I guess we've always thought that we're kind of the pièce de résistance of evolution. We're mammals, and we're growing and learning. But this idea that we're above the animals or we're above the plants.
I think that's what makes this tree hugger kind of an insult if people call you that.
Yeah, which right now, it's their loss.
Yes. I have been known to hug a few trees as well. And there's nothing like a yellow birch. Oh, it's so good. It's very
Oh,
smooth
yeah.
in some places, and then it has those curly little things coming off that kind of get on your cheek.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we may be getting way too spooky-ooky for people.
Well, but however, what do dogs do around trees besides relieve themselves? I mean, dogs love trees.
Yes. They
And
do love
go
trees.
and my dogs, they'll disappear into bushes for like
Yes.
forever, and they're in this underground world.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So this brings us pretty close to a topic that was down on our list a little bit, but I'm going to go there because we're so close. Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
How bad can it get? What he says about dogs? Okay, he says, if there are no dogs in heaven, I want to go where they went.
Yeah.
It's so lovely. I mean, I think that comment, because I tried to find the context of it this morning, I think it was when he was talking about hope.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about hope and like a dog, never doubts that there'll be another walk, that there'll be another meal, that, that there'll be a chance for love. They just embody this grounded optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't that be a heaven that we all want to be in?
Absolutely. And even the wolf packs, wolves are dogs. I mean, they made for life. They really go as a pack and they take care of the pack. I think that it's changing the way we really kind of it's changing the way that I've always been in the world, which has created a lot of anxiety. Like when things are well, I'm okay. When things aren't well, I'm not okay. These kind of battles that go on. But as I've been spending a lot of time in outside of Toronto on the lake, I can just go and lay down on the grass and just feel wonderful. Now, a qigong teacher of mine kind of had us doing that all the time. Um, so it's the old, it's like it's not about returning to nature; it's realizing that we are nature,
Yeah, and
the
that
nature of our
hierarchy.
being.
Okay, and let's not breeze right over the hierarchy thing, because I remember in our pre-call you're making me aware of the hierarchy concept. Set my mind in new directions during the course of the
Yeah,
following day, because I was in a situation where hierarchy was crazily
yeah,
present, and I don't think I would have noticed it. I think I would have sort of got on my hero's journey thing, and because
yeah.
I've been in a men's profession all my life. There's only 6 girls in my dental school class.
Wow, wow.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, people have heard me say that the head of the oral surgery department didn't want to train us to take out teeth because he believes so strongly that women should not be dentists. I have never taken a tooth out in my life. I just made my practice go with my artistic flow, and was a cosmetic dentist, and people didn't come to me who wanted to lose any teeth. So that guy did me a huge favor, because you don't make any
Oh
money
wow.
pulling teeth.
Yeah.
But I bring this up and to say, you know, what about this hierarchy thing and how we buy into it? I'm not just saying, it gets imposed on us. I think it's part of the stories we're telling up here that puts us at a tremendous disadvantage when we walk into that room.
Mm-hmm.
If we think of it like a hierarchy, and that's the tree thing that we were talking about, like, we are mammals, we are part of nature in every way. It's the only way we're going to fix the climate change problem, is to realize our role in the whole big scheme. But talk to
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit more about the hierarchy thing and what you think is important that we realize.
Well, just from viewing history back to the Roman Empire, and the hierarchies are not sustainable. Hierarchies are not sustainable. And Alan Watts, who we both enjoy, the philosopher Alan Watts, was talking about one of the reasons why the church has not been as effective as they could be is they kind of copied the hierarchies in governments. So I think that as we're kind of evolving, we're moving out of that hierarchical view of life where somebody is the leader and we follow them, and they're going to be the inspiration for young people and so on and so forth. So I think it's really, instead of looking at the world in that kind of geometric, it's looking at the world more in terms of round shapes. Round shapes. It's so wonderful to be in a round building and having people sit around in the circle, because at a certain point, you're not alone anymore. So, dogs. One of the most enjoyable experience I had when I was living in Santa Monica, experiences, is that at like once every 3 weeks they would have a dog party, and so people would bring their dogs to this area near Montana Avenue where I was living, and I'd never done something like this, and there might be like 20 people or 24 people, and something, so I got there, and then I just let go of any kind of expectation, and I just watched the dogs. It was the most enjoyable evening. It was the best party I've ever gone to.
Really?
They had so much fun, and they were so happy, and they were sharing balls, and they were doing all this kind of stuff. And there's a little bit of Lady and the Tramp romance going on, and but
And
they were
there
just,
weren't a couple of bullies that wanted to dominate the whole group, or were they
well,
there and nobody gave a crap?
yeah, yeah. It just seemed like because it was a whole group, you didn't have that one dominant dog, and
Yeah.
it was joy. It was just joy to watch them. So that's not a hierarchy. That's like the heroine's journey initiation, and being together in the joy and letting it okay to be in the joy. Now, the other thing I did think about last night when you sent the email is that the other thing that dogs have that's an advantage over humans is they don't watch a clock. The late Irish poet John O'Donohue once
I love
said,
John O'Donohue.
"Me too."
Speechless.
Yeah,
Alan Watts too. Okay, just so people know, just
yeah,
hold your train of thought. I'm writing down. If people see me holding a pen and writing
yeah,
every once in a while, it's because I'm keeping track of the people that Tom is mentioning,
yeah.
so that I will give you links in the show notes that are not with Spotify, not on your favorite place you get podcasts. If you go to the Goodness Exchange, to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, there will be a magnificent article about Tom and the conversation we are having, where you can get some quick pointers to remind you of some of the insights. And I will put a whole bunch of notes there about the people Tom's mentioning, and a quick link to get to some of their best stuff, and then you're off on your own journey. So Alan Watts is definitely one of them that you've mentioned, and Joseph Campbell for sure. I remember when my 21-year-old son found Joseph Campbell and was just
Oh, yeah.
mystified by that. And, I was mystified by it when I was 21, which is 40 years sooner. So, okay, so continue. Sorry if I broke your train of thought, but I just had to let people know that enjoy this conversation, maybe enjoy it 2 or 3 times over. Because I got to tell you, folks, Tom is the kind of guest on this podcast where he drops something on you, and then your mind just goes in a swirl, and you don't hear what he said next, which could have been equally as important. So I would encourage you to go to the Goodness Exchange, find the article about this. You'll see all the links you need to for what to do next, and listen to this a few times so that you don't miss anything, because we're covering a lot of ground here. Okay, continue on.
So I just said that dogs have an advantage in terms of being in their entire body and their entire body wisdom, because they're not bound by time. And I mentioned John O'Donohue, this wonderful, brilliant, warm, humane poet, who was asked about stress. And he said, stress is a perverse relationship with time. Stress is a perverse relationship with time. And so if we go back to our dogs, and then they experience the morning light, the sun during the day, or maybe the clouds and the rain, and then it gets dark at night. They're in the cycle. They're in the natural cycle. And I think because we can get detached from it, because all the things we need to do or change our life or do this to get more love or more success, all that kind of monkey chatter, that we're not really connected to what's happening around us.
It's so true. It's so true. If you really think about almost anything that gives you stress, there's a
Yes.
time connection.
Right.
Waiting for a test result. I just have to wait over the weekend for a medical test,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that was the stress. I'm not much of a worrier. I think there's a gene for that, and I didn't get it, I'm pretty sure. But when it did pop into my mind, what will I do if that comes back bad? it was a time thing, right? The minutes just seemed to tick by so slowly
Yes.
over as
Yeah.
long as, or it can be, our kids aren't home and it's 11:13.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be home by, and now the clock's ticking and you're imagining you're going to get a bad call from the
Hmm.
police or, it's time. Time is the enemy almost in all stressful circumstances, and dogs sure do not have a sense of time.
No, because dogs don't, as far as I can tell, dogs don't have the thought that there's too much to do and not enough time to do
Mm,
it.
perfect. They do not have that. No, I live with that every single day. You should see my to-do lists. They're frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that this is a really, really important part of what we're offering people here is to take a step back and pause and see if time isn't your greatest enemy when it comes to back to this, the stories that are playing, the mental chatter that's going on between our ears. How do you see that in the stories that play in our minds, or for that matter, the stories that we act on?
In terms of our unhealthy relationship with time,
Mm-hmm.
well, there's something that's timeless about storytelling that really comes from the heart, and storytelling that engages the senses, and storytelling that really is about groups of people and how they interact and kind of what they learn or how they go through crises. A lot of stories are about how you go through crises. So I just, when I was formulating my thoughts, I realized I was holding my breath.
Mm. Okay.
And then it was kind of flashing back to being in school when I would know the answer to something, but I couldn't really kind of articulate it.
Okay, let's do
But
this.
yeah,
Let's just let this time thing sit there.
yeah,
I have this great interview coming up with a guy who teaches us to just park things
yeah,
over here. Or was that
yeah.
you? Were you the one who talked to me about parking things? Oh, it's another guy.
That is a part of this focusing process, this bodily felt experience, which
Oh,
is it's a whole ritual, and you put all your worries aside, you do all this kind of thing.
yeah,
There might be one thing there. We played with it yesterday a little bit, and you relax and see where it
yeah.
kind of lodges in your body.
Well, let's just
Um,
park this insight
yeah,
about time and stress and go on to the last two or three things that I had on our list today. One is perfectionism. Okay.
hmm,
Dogs are not burdened by perfectionism. They come in the house and they shake off, and all the mud or the skunk, whatever they just rolled in, goes flying. They skid across the floor awkwardly when they're rushing towards us. They bark when we need them to be quiet. They
yeah,
come in joyfully and smell like they just rolled in death. They scratch at the screen door to get in and make a hole in it. They they don't they don't live in an apologetic state. They don't
yeah.
say I should be better than this. Talk to us about perfectionism and the stories, the mental chatter about this that's in our heads that dogs can teach us something.
Hey, I would love to just tell you this dream I had that has stayed with me for 30 years and taught me
What?
more about perfectionism than any lecturer or whoever it was had ever talked about it.
I don't remember any of my dreams like that. But go for it. Maybe we can learn
So,
something from it.
again, and we talk about if you're going through a hard time or feel stuck, how important it is to pause. And sometimes that pause is what happens when we're sleeping and we're dreaming. So I came out of film school. I was having a lot of success, and everybody wanted this script and that script, and there were stars involved and all this kind of thing. But eventually, I didn't realize I had to be a salesman. I was kind of waiting for it to come to me, and nothing actually happened. And so I found myself in a depression, and I couldn't write, and I was just lethargic. Didn't know what to do with myself. I had a a really hard job. I became a bellman at a hotel, which was kind of humiliating, having to wear like a orange polyester uniform after thinking I was going to be this big superstar screenwriter. And so when I totally bottomed out, I fell asleep. And when I woke up the next day, I was in a great mood. It was like spring was here. I had no idea. I wouldn't even thought about it. But have you ever had a dream where you fall in love in the dream and you wake up and you still feel the love?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's why it was like the depression was gone, the writer's block was gone. I was just really in a wonderful mood. I just was ready to kind of embrace life. And then I was walking in the park and the dream I had came back to me.
Okay.
And so in this dream, I was working for a film company that was called Mediocre Movies.
And you were high-fiving that job.
And the mission was you had to enjoy and have fun when you were working there. The other thing was your role was to support everyone around you to kind of do that. But the main thing was you could just relax because mediocre was fine. And so I found that it was like, because I wasn't having fun in the film business, it was stressful and intense and writing and all that stuff. And it was like, no, the whole idea, because if you are together and kind of in a joyful mood and supporting each other, there's brilliance that will kind of come out of that. But this was, so anyway, this was the dream. And the dream was so clear because I remember, the Hollywood sign. There was sorry, there was there was a sign on the Hollywood Hills, but it was in orange, and it said mediocre movies, why settle for less?
And what did this tell your little heart and brain?
Well, this was a heroine's journey for sure, because I went from the individual against the world into the group. It was improvisational. It was supporting everyone else. It was being in the moment, all these kind of things. But what it was telling me is that I had this bar of perfectionism that was so high, I couldn't write, and I had no flow to it whatsoever. And so that was the that was the lesson, that perfection squashes your creative flow. And the irony was, just for fun with some friends, we started just writing a mediocre movie. It was some of the best things we had written because there was no bar. And, mediocre, it was a satirical dream, obviously, because when I told friends in Hollywood I was going to start a company called Mediocre Movies, it's like, you can't do that. I go, well, what's the quality level of most films that you see? They go, well, they're mediocre. It's like, yeah, supply and demand. We're here for you.
I love this so much. It reminds me of I'm a great one. I am a ravenous reader of nonfiction.
Yeah.
So I'm always reading some next theory or somebody's biography. John Cleese's biography. Have you read John Cleese's biography?
No, but I adore him.
Oh, just for people that need some context, Monty Python, the creator of Monty Python, and 1,000 other hilarious things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his biography reminds me of what you just said, through and through. He was able to unplug from the need to be flawless. That is our limiting factor on almost everything, right? Applying for a new job, we'll do it when we've lost 50 pounds because maybe they'll like us in the interview better. We'll break up with the person we're seeing that it's not so good when we have a better job, so we'll be more attractive to the next. I don't know. We just sacrifice good all the time for this perfection, for great. Like if we can't get great, if we can't make a touchdown, then we don't want to just advance the ball 6 yards. we've got to be okay with imperfection, because flawlessness is a myth. Talk about mythology, right? And some of John Cleese's book, in other words, it's so funny. We did a long trip that was 1,000 miles in a car, and we plugged John in when we left Vermont. We made it all the way to Illinois with him. And I'm telling you, the guy reminds us about the importance of imperfection,
Yeah.
and the courage to just try something that just strikes you. And I have to say, we're not far from being done with this episode, but it was a stretch for me to send you this. Almost I was afraid I would insult you last night when I sent you the idea of couching this through the love of a dog and a dog's consciousness. And I think this is a good example of, if we'd have tried to be flawless,
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
knows how uninteresting this would be. Okay, so my question is, can we learn from dogs to step outside perfectionism and sort of really, from our heart, you keep referring to that again, operate from here? And the word authentic is thrown around so much. I'm not even sure people know what that is, Tom. Can you help us with the definition of authentic? But because I think it's where we're beating around the bush right now.
Well, I mean, what for me, authentic, it's poetic, but it's about what is down to earth, what feels genuine.
Yeah. The other thing I got to share with you that I first turned to Chuck, and then almost everybody who had turned me on to his biography agreed with me when I ran it by him. He, through the whole book, keeps saying things like, and it was good. It was good. It was good enough. I mean, he works with some unbelievable people, and he's never just saying that anything went out of this world. He was very satisfied with it was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what dogs don't always want it to be perfect. They don't always want, no. Chuck and I, that was our big takeaway from that book, is that, God, we got to unplug from this need for everything to be perfect, everything to be zowie. It's good enough.
Yeah, and when I'm working with writers and filmmakers and we're talking about this, I just say, look, it's not about, when I say mediocre, it's there's a certain satirical part of it, but perfectionism does kill creativity. And so instead of, having a bar of excellence to get to, mediocre movies doesn't mean like lowering the bar. It just means get rid of the bar. We don't need it.
Yes, we don't need it. And, thank gosh, because I got to take this back to the Goodness Exchange. Almost every innovator I've ever interviewed and written about knew that instinctively. They just did not care. They had some concept in their mind that was so crystal clear about what could be.
Yeah.
That they never waited. And a lot of them in this podcast will, when I get to the end, as I am going to get to in a minute with you, I'm going to ask you, what do you really wish people knew? And I'll bet you 25% of them say, start now. Do something. Take a step. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start at your idea and getting it out there in the world. So I think perfectionism is, man, if we can just let that go, there's no end to the goodness that could come in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely.
I agree.
Lovely.
I agree.
Okay. And then there's a topic that I've always had trouble with. We're going to wrap up on this topic, being present. So you and I are old enough to know about a book called Be Here Now.
Right.
Ram Dass. I was a little bit too young for the Ram Dass era, but I had lots of friends that were about 10 years older than me. And that was one of the first books forced upon me. As a child of the 70s and 80s, the 60s, everyone knew Ram Dass. And that was the real wise people. They would always say, here, you need this. It was the purple cover. Remember the crazy purple cover of Be Here Now? Somehow they saw that I was not being present. I was in the hero's journey. I was on the
Mhm.
conquest. If you're a woman in a man's world, you have to be that way.
That's right. That's right.
I was never present. So talk to us about how the highest teaching, I think it's the highest teaching that dogs offer us, is to be truly pleasant, to be in the moment. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
Well, I would just say that when they're not in, they are, they're not perfect. When they're not in the moment, it's usually when they think kibble is going to be coming soon.
Or a rabbit goes by, one of the two.
Yeah. So, but because they don't have that same relationship with time, and they need to be in the moment to survive. In a way, yeah, they need to be kind of present. But the sometimes I would get tripped up with "Be Here Now" or the power of now. I mean, they're beautiful books, and I learned a lot from them. But I've just changed it to "Be Here."
Okay.
Just
All
yeah,
right.
just be here because it's so enjoyable to be here with you. And
Likewise.
I have a sense of I know some of your story, but I have a sense of where you're at. I have a sense of kind of where we're at, and I know what we're doing is we're just making a simple, delicious, healthy meal around how to tell stories, how to communicate, and how to enjoy life more by slowing it all down. Slowing it all
Yeah.
down.
Okay. I can't help but give people a few clues around that notion of slowing down. There are two interviews on the Goodness Exchange at the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast with a guy named Carl Honore. If you look, speaking of slowing down, you will never find a better champion, a better person to articulate that concept than Carl Honore, Honore. I've interviewed him twice, and he has a fabulous TED Talk from way back, so don't expect it to have 2025 video quality. But he has been considered, he's the guy that started the whole slow travel, slow eating, slow cooking. Like, be truly present for what you're doing right now. And I think that we have some, because of the hero's journey, because of whatever is going on between our ears, we're leaving a lot of joy on the table
Hmm.
by not slowing down.
Hmm.
The question I had written down about this is kind of all encompassing. It's Tom, it's fair to say that dogs are somatic. We've talked about, how they're in their body, and we can certainly learn from that. There's something mythic there. It's the heroine's journey every time they leave the door in the darkness, right? We've
Right.
talked about how they're improv geniuses. And that is the quality
Hmm.
that most connects to this being in the moment.
Yes, that's right.
The improv. If you just think what improv is, it's like one comedian gets to say anything and the other one just has to react to it, and then off they go.
Right. And they have to be there in that world and present in it. As soon as someone tries to tell a joke, it ruins the skit.
Yeah, or if someone tries to jump ahead or shape the conversation to
Right.
go a certain way because they've got some idea in their head
Yeah.
no, that ruins it too. It has to be a fully present back and forth, the
Right.
moment all
Yeah.
for its own, exactly what's said, that's all you get. You got to respond to it.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up here, what do you think the stories, this mental chatter, let's take it all the way back to where we started. If we can acknowledge that we've got this constant mental chatter going on between our ears, the Buddhists call it the monkey, some call it the monkey mind. I've heard it called that before.
Monkey mind too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, let's just acknowledge that it's there. It's there the minute you and I unplug from this recording. We're going to
Right.
walk out into the world and our head talk is going to start. What do you think we can do with the level of knowledge that we now have after talking together for an hour and 37 minutes, what can we do differently with that? The minute I get up from this chair, I'm headed for my kitchen. I've got this and that to do with the rest of the day. I'm sure you have. What's a practice we can take away from this? Any part of this conversation, or you can give us a number of practices. I'm kind of want to stick with the staying in the present for a moment here. If you've got something, talk to me about a couple practices that will give people a different lived experience after they've invested so much time in our conversation.
Well, we've certainly talked about this, and the baseline is to remember to take full and complete breaths. That's it. That's the reminder. And, like the founder of Aikido, the martial arts, said when his students said, "How can you be in the moment all the time and know what your opponent is going to do?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm not in the moment all the time. You just don't see how fast I come back." So it's really that kind of being aware of the return and take off any judgment around it. It's like we're kind of programmed to be up here and it can happen and we're going, but if you just slow down and take a really deep inhalation and exhalation, you'll come down into your body. And it also can help just to take a few steps, and come into it. But there's always the, if you're, really out there and really in all this stuff, and, you might not do it in the middle of an executive meeting, but that's the old,
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh yeah, that feels better.
Okay. And I want to tell people that in episode number 2, we also talk about this breathing thing a lot more than we are going to talk about it right now. There's a fabulous book by a guy named James Nestor, who I interviewed. So in the show notes for this, I will leave you James Nestor's interview with me and a link to his book. And then you're going to get that again when you look and more deeper about this breathing thing, because it's huge, folks. Because Tom and I talk about it quite a lot in the episode 2 after this one. Okay, and so Tom, go ahead.
That there is that, and then it's also about reaching out if you're alone on the phone or something like that. But a lot of this is happening when we're alone. So when you reach out to somebody and you kind of connect with them and resonate and kind of appreciate what you have between yourself and this person, then that will start to shift things right away. If you're sitting down, you definitely want to stand up and walk around, because a lot of it is when I would work for hours and then I'd be walking around like this, but just the act of just kind of just standing up and, shaking a little bit, feel your body and kind of move around. Because we're literally kind of living up here. So I think that these, there's a number of exercises that we don't have time for now, but we can do another time that are really helpful with all of this, that are incredibly helpful, that I learned from Jean Houston.
Yeah. Jean Houston, I gotta, you have to give me some links to some of the work that you like from her.
Yes, I will.
And also Alan Watts. We breezed over him, but that is no one to miss either. And I'm going to put both of them on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, so we, Tom and I tried not to plan and to plan and tried not to plan and to plan. We went back and forth on how this go, but I'm really happy with what we've covered. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you really think is fundamental to how we go out of this experience, hopefully transformed?
I feel like we've kind of covered the basics.
Great. And that is true. And we may have to do something with exercise and stuff, but I'm also going to work in some way with Tom to create a good what's next for everybody, because I think that's really important. Yeah. I don't like podcasters who get people all fired up about something and then they don't give you a next. Surely we're going to, on the written article on the Goodness Exchange, you're going to find enough next with all these links I'm going to give you that we mentioned. But still, Tom has a unique way in the world that is a singular fresh perspective, and I'd like him to be able to elaborate on some of those. So maybe we'll put those in the show notes. There's no limit on how much our show notes, how long they can be. So anyway, we'll figure that out. Okay. So I always like to wrap up on this notion of if this had been only 2 or 3 minutes. I have had my 2 or 3 minute of fame. I was after my book came out. I was interviewed by several very, very big media markets. One was a Chicago market in the same hour as Rachel Ray and Michelle Obama were interviewed live, and me, little old me. And so what do you do when somebody says you got 2 minutes here to convey this? What's the one big idea you really wish people knew, Tom?
Well, I think just this simple notion that to remember that we are mammals. And if we study other mammals who aren't in their head or they're not on cyberspace or the internet, we study their behavior and we study their body language and how they express themselves and things like that. It's kind of it just makes sense to come out of this world of mental chatter and all the news and all that kind of thing. It just makes sense to kind of come back down. It's coming down into our body, but it's coming, back to the earth. So I think that if you watch dogs, they breathe with their whole body. They breathe with their whole body. Yeah. And I don't know if this really fits, but it's so much fun to watch a dog sleeping and dreaming.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
they're doing it all. They're
It's so
working out.
real.
They're working things out through their dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I think that we, in this 2.0, human 2.0 slow evolution that we're talking about, I suspect those are the real challenges that we'll face, is
Yeah.
pausing when this narrative that's so crazy and so useless is going on in our heads.
Yeah.
And then doing something consciously more responsive to the real moment that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think of John Cleese, a way to kind of snap out of that mental chatter, it's like being hypnotized by it.
Yeah.
One of the best ways to snap out of it is to walk goofy.
Oh, silly walking. Silly
And who
walking.
does that better than John
Oh,
Cleese?
silly walking.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a very, very good place to close this little moment in time together on the thought of silly walking. I have done that too, much to my children's chagrin, as an exercise method. Oh, the security camera film that we never want shared. Okay, I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure, Tom. I hope that the insights that Tom and I have shared with you, whether you're a dog lover or not, feel a bit more real because we couched this conversation in something that many of us will know, the love of a dog. And if it was too foreign for you because you're not a dog lover,
Get a dog.
Get a dog. Go hang out with somebody's dog. Do something.
Go to a dog park and watch.
Go to a dog park and sit on a bench and just watch.
Or just watch The Lady and the Tramp.
Yes.
Whatever it takes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Okay, now look for Tom's episode 2. I'm going to try and get 2 different pictures of Tom so you don't run across it and think it's the same interview twice. That's the trouble we have on the Goodness Exchange. Is that folks see somebody interviewed for the second time and they say, "Oh, I already heard that one."
Right.
The interview that Tom and I do next is much deeper, not couched in the wisdom of dogs, but just much more about the things that we can consider when we are trying to live our the best life we can live and trying to find more joy and less fear, which is always my goal.
Amen.
All right. Have a great, great day, Tom. Enjoy your life, folks. Live in the present. Get a dog. Have a great day.